But in any case, we're here and we've had some great chats getting ready to do this interview. And you guys do have a lot more data to share. I was looking at those slides going in and I'm like, whoa, this is going to be perfect because you're going to answer all those questions that people have as far as, data. I know data collection measurement is a big issue and you've got some solutions. So
we do. Yeah, and it was funny. While I was at the dentist yesterday, there was a purifier, an air purifier in the room, and I went home and I did a Google search for it. And, I hopped on Instagram 10 minutes later and had an ad for air purifiers. Same with Facebook, Amazon as well. And what's interesting is I think we all expect that, right? You do a search for something and we see it digitally. But do we expect it to change our TV consumption or our TV commercial consumption? And, I think people are a little bit turned off by some of the digital stuff, but the TV ad that's dynamic, I think people give it a pass. I don't think they quite understand that it is truly personal to them and it's being served up that way. So it's interesting how we leverage that one-to-one data to do that. And, if you think about, I did the search on Comcast, right? That's my internet service provider. They're also my TV provider, right? So connecting the dots between how it gets personal really, really quick is kind of interesting, just based off a search for a purifier from the dentist office.
So in the future, the next time you turn on the TV, you'll start seeing ads for air purifiers, right? You'll watch Grey's Anatomy or whatever, and pure air purifier ads will pop up.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, I'm going to do a brief data overview, just kind of lay the groundwork of how Cadillac's doing that. Ryan, if you want to hit up the next slide. So, Cadillac's been heavily investing in data that started back in 2019. And what we've done is, we've gone out and partnered with companies who have data on everybody in the US, right? You think of the Conversants of the world, the Merkles, the Infobases, right? They're basically the digital dictionary of today. And we provided them data based off our buyers, our propensity, and they went out and modeled for us and found a group of people who are more likely to buy Cadillac. In fact, they're 19x more likely to buy Cadillac than any other manufacturer, more so than BMW, Mercedes, and all of our competitive set. So that's kind of like the foundation of what we use. It's this third-party data set that's influenced by our first-party data set that we purchase, and it's one-to-one, and we can push it out in multiple channels, whether it be ATV, CTV, OTT, right, digital, and so on. So the next slide kind of illustrates that for us in terms of our process flow, but it all started with our first-party data set, which we have obviously pretty robust buyer pool. We sent that out and we sent it into this company and they modeled it, right? And said, how do we find more people like this? And then ultimately, how do we distribute the data, whether that be through a published addressable marketplace or ATV? So we've identified a really finite group of people that are Cadillac intenders that currently do not own Cadillac. Right, on the flip side of that, we obviously can do the same thing with our owners, right? Our first party data. So just wanted to kind of lay that groundwork and really kind of set up how we're using data because, CTV, ATV, that is the benefit, right? It's the intelligence, the data behind it. So Ryan, you can hit the next slide, please. So to show you a little bit about what that looks like for us, right? 1,000 different variables in this data profile, this data company that we partnered with. And we identified about 70 that were pure to Cadillac, right? It was our foundation of our high propensity audience. And what's interesting is it's not just typical demographic data, right? A lot of it's financial data, lifestyle data. For example, do they like foreign travel, household income over a certain amount, but also what they currently own from a vehicle standpoint, right? And then some demographic data. But there is really a unique set of attributes to our company and to our brand that people had that really liked to buy us. So we found those and we built upon it and we continue to use that. So that's kind of the overview of Cadillac and our data setup, just to allow this to make a little bit more sense.
Well, we actually have an audience question. I don't normally ask the audience questions in the middle of the interview, but it's the perfect timing. So
sure.
Kelly Lawson is wondering which data company do you work with? Can you tell us? Is that proprietary?
Yeah. I think we've been pretty public. We partner with Dentsu from a media standpoint, and Dentsu owns Merkle. So it made sense for us. Obviously, depending on your agencies. For example, I know Conversant, Epsilon's another huge data provider. Leo Burnett and their holding company, right? They're one party. So there's lots of different data sources out there. One made sense for us. Another might make sense for someone else.
Okay. So looking at this graphic, it kind of looks like you flip the funnel. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, that's kind of a good way to think about it. Right. Typically when at least back in 2018, 2019, when we'd buy TV, right, we'd buy linear first. And I think most people did. And we kind of took a pause and said, hey, are we doing this the right way? Right. If we have this really great audience, this really great target, should we flip it? And should we be buying all the addressable, whether that be ATV, OTT, any sort of connected platform first, and then work our way back up to ultimately linear and tentpole events, right? And if you do that, you start with the highly targeted audience, and then you move to the less targeted audience. And it really allows you to make sure you're capturing the right people. You have to make sure you got the right people, though. So yeah, we've been implementing this since 2019. And it was, kind of a game changer for us. It changed the way we worked with all of our partners.
Are there specific video channels which are proving more effective than others? And can you sort of quantify that?
Yeah, so I think, I think they all work in tandem.
Okay.
But there's definitely some things that, work better than others. And I guess I should say we're never going to get out of linear TV, right? It's got a purpose, it's mass reach, it aligns with different sorts of goals. But for us, when it comes to moving sheet metal, OTT, ATV is definitely the place to be because we have the targeting behind it. A couple of things that we've seen though, right? I think some of the questions that were asked earlier lead up to this. From a CTV standpoint, it seems like less is more. Right? From the ATV standpoint, it seems like more is more. And what I mean by that is ATV is your cable networks and they're geographic, right? So the only way to expand reach is to add partners. On the flip side, CTV, and I think if we go to the next slide, right, it is a wild landscape. Yeah. And I think in this situation, less is more, right? It is kind of a crazy place to navigate. And there is a ton of overlap. So we've spent a lot of time really honing down a very tight list of partners to help control for frequency, right? To really figure out how do we do this and how do we do it well. I think the other thing is you have ACR technology, right? In a lot of the TVs, which is automatic content recognition. And that is platform agnostic, right? That goes out there and says, hey, I know if someone was exposed to my ad based off this automatic content recognition, and then you can fortify frequency against those if they didn't get it, right? So that's another interesting way to look at this is how do you do that, right? How do you kind of become device or provider agnostic and what data is out there to do that and measurement?
So to go back to data for a second, what sort of data infrastructure is needed? Can you talk a little bit about the setup?
Yeah, I think, right, we obviously spent quite a bit investing into our data infrastructure, right? We kind of talked about this high propensity audience that we had. We have really good organizational structure of all of our owner data. And then ultimately Cadillac and GM as a whole is investing in our own kind of Marcom tech stack, right? So heavy investment. That said, I think you can kind of start anywhere, right? If you don't have that, what third-party data can you go out and buy, right? Auto data, there's always Polk. So there's definitely ways to, get into it without a rich, high-intensity data set. So it really depends on where you're at and what your goals are.
So you said linear TV is never going to go away. It's always going to be part of the mix. So if we talk about, OTT, CTV, what do you see as some of the pros and cons, and what is Cadillac using more of?
We use them all. And I think obviously we're continuing to invest more into ATV. Part of the reason for that is, it allows for, I think, better frequency control. But then, we leverage CTV, I think I have a couple spend graphs coming up a little bit later that kind of show our transition from linear into, this cluttered, crazy marketplace. But it's got to be done with some diligence and just really make sure that you are testing partners. You're controlling your own measurement. But I wouldn't say there's, one that's better than another. It's the data intelligence behind it and your targeting.
Okay. Okay. I know you've said in the past that you think that there's a shift from a brand-led world to more of a consumer-led world. So what makes you say that? And can you give some examples of that?
Yeah. And I guess I should start by saying, like, ultimately, right, your brand and your brand image is ultimately the most important thing you have, right? If you think of what Apple's doing with privacy, right, that's becoming part of their brand image. And it's really about protecting the consumer, right? They went to market and had this PR announcement that we are going to protect your data. And then later they developed an ad around it. So I think like, brand is super important, but what is changing is this idea of like must-watch TV, right? Like I think that's a thing of the past. People are on demand; they pull what they want to watch. It's now binge-worthy TV. So this idea of like, hey, I'm going to wait for and watch this program at this time every week is gone, right? And that's why there's so many CTV providers now. Is everybody has the ability to distribute TV content, and people want to watch it when they want to watch it. So it's that fundamental shift in like how consumers view stuff now. It's no longer like I'm going to wait. It's I'm going to watch 10 episodes tonight on Roku. So it's like, and wake up or go to sleep at 4 a.m. So it's a really different mindset, and I think that's the shift that we're seeing is it's a pull versus push. But you again, the brand has to be there.
Well, and if you're like me, you end up watching the same program twice because you fall asleep in the middle of it, and then you have to get up the next day and figure out where you fell asleep and start over again. So
yeah, no doubt.
That's usually my TV consumption is like every program twice. So
yeah, my wife and I just binged Money Heist, and there was 5 seasons, so it took some time.
yeah. I'm into Apple TV has a great one, The Morning Show, which is back with Jennifer Aniston, and it's really good. It's really compelling. I love Apple TV, but that's just, I like Apple, but everybody's got their own favorite channel, I guess.
Yep.
That's the thing you gotta look at. So I know we are going to talk about some results. I think that might be the next slide.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's talk about this.
Yeah, so we broke down our ATV into really 3 different categories. One, we wanted to validate that we were finding buyers in the marketplace, right? Not necessarily Cadillac buyers, but just people who are more likely to buy auto right now. 2, we wanted to make sure that are we reaching them at what we consider to be an optimal level of frequency? And then 3, did we drive incremental sales lift? And right, the results here kind of speak for themselves. The way we measured sales lift was through a true test and control study, right? So when you control your own audiences, you have the ability to pull out control groups before you distribute, and then you can measure the change. So we've seen awesome success. This is from 2020. This was over probably 18 different campaigns. Obviously, we're sitting here in 2021. I just got to look at some of our results from the first half of the year, and they are strong. We've seen continued growth. We're seeing some of our ROI up to 15x now. So we've continued to modify and make improvements, but it's been interesting to prove it out. And when you have results like this, it really makes for corporate adoption. Right? Cadillac was kind of the first brand within GM to do this, but it definitely helped the cause.
I was going to say, I know the other brands are watching this very carefully. Chevy, Buick, GMC, because they're learning from you guys. And you cannot argue with these results. 225% return on investment. And didn't you? How did you mentioned something when we were chatting before about you kind of had an aha moment with validating this.
So what's interesting is we obviously I think it's super important for anybody who does things to measure themselves, right? But you also have partner measurement. And the first time I met with one of our ATV providers, they brought in some measurement that they did, and they shared it, and it had really good performance, right? Like, of course, it's self-reported data, it's going to look good, right? I think that's the the assumption. And when he started sharing the numbers, I was kind of looking at him like, oh man, like I have the same numbers. And we're both looking at each other like, holy crap, this stuff works, right? And, you know, it kind of fundamentally changed the conversation for us, right? Instead of saying, how did you get this? It's like, okay, we're both doing the same thing and seeing the same thing. How do we push further, right? So I think there's a value to self-measurement and lining it up with partner measurement. And then we do as GM a whole lot with media mix modeling, right? And that's validated stuff in a third way. So it's just really nice when you can get two separate parties to, or three separate parties to say the same thing, which is this stuff is up and to the right. So it just really helped the conversation and helped our progression. So I would definitely encourage everybody to invest in their own measurement and make sure that they have their data set up to do so.
So is there, do we need to move on to the next slide? I think we're done with that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So is there a maximum addressable threshold? I mean, let's talk about addressable.
Yeah, I think, right, this is kind of our journey. The blue bar here is linear, and then the gold bar is investment in addressable and the growth in that. And I think, you know, obviously within addressable, I think there is a maximum, right? It's based off your audience size. It's based off how many partners you partner with. So I think we as a brand are nearing that. You know, I think CTV and all the different things we bucket under that in OTT, right? It's kind of still the wild, wild west. And there is a maximum, but I think it's a lot harder to find. And I think, you know, it's proceed with caution versus ATV. I'd feel a whole lot more comfortable going all in, right? Because it is unique. You know, your cable companies don't have overlap for the most part. CTV will overlap with ATV, and you know we've done some commingled studies with some partners where we've tried to merge together ATV and CTV. Again, it's the idea of investing in that measurement to really know what you're getting into.
Well, addressable TV just seems like the truth in the way. So I'm a little confused. Why aren't more brands using it? I mean, are there holdbacks? Is it the data measurement or what is it?
You know, I think like, you know, and I think some of the earlier questions hit on this, you know, that I think there's education, right? I mean, back when digital first came out, it was all about what is this stuff and how do we use it? ATV, you know, it's newer, you know, obviously the data investment behind it. You know, I don't think I would personally go out and buy ATV unless I had some targeting and some rich data insight. You know, maybe with CTV2, I think we do buy a little without some intelligence just as part of our upfronts with our linear partners. But it's really about, you know, that part of it and making sure you have that, and then also brand goals. Right? Like, you know, a company like Coca-Cola and Nike that, you know, mass awareness might work really, really well for them. You know, more niche brands and smaller audience profiles like Cadillac isn't going to sell to everybody. So it makes sense for us to be in this space. And I'm sure every brand probably has, you know, some sort of thing that they sell that is maybe a little bit more niche, a little bit more targeted. Then it's just, you know, everybody has access to different data. We have first party data. Some people don't. Some people have a ton of it. So it's pretty dynamic and pretty personal is my thought on it.
Well, you guys aren't really a niche brand. I mean, you guys run the Super Bowl, so
yeah, but you know, specific buyer pool, let's say.
Gotcha. We gonna have another Super Bowl ad this year? I know you can't tell me.
Can't talk about that one.
That's been my question of everybody, and everybody's like, no, can't talk about it too soon. Yep. Crazy, you know, that's what we want to write about is Super Bowl because it's such a big deal. But
yeah, for
obviously
sure.
there's more than just Super Bowl. You know, Super Bowl is one day. So this is the sort of stuff that's going to take you through the rest of the year.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, Super Bowl was a good thing for us last year. And you know, the new Cadillac lyric that's coming out is absolutely amazing. So if you haven't seen it, I'd check it out. That's gonna be my plug for the brand.
Are you buying one?
You know, I almost pre-ordered one. We had a pre-order campaign that was phenomenal, and I almost did, but I figured I'd let the consumers who don't work for the brand get one first. So
I think you guys sold out in like 9 minutes or 8 minutes or something. I don't know.
We did.
Crazy
yeah.
number. Like
Yeah,
I
we
was
had
watching it.
yeah, it was a really great campaign, and we activated that obviously across all sorts of different channels and mediums. So, but yeah, we sold out in under 10 minutes, or about 10 minutes, which is cool.
Wow. Well, is there, I think that's, is there another slide that we still need to hit, or is that the
No, I
last?
think this was the last one from a measurement
Okay.
standpoint.
Okay. So anything else that you'd want to say? I mean, are we past the whole COVID? You know, is COVID still affecting you guys in terms of your buys, or are we kind of
Yeah, I mean,
that?
I think that's one of the other benefits of ATV is, when COVID hit, obviously supply chains were impacted, right? Stores were closed. So we actually used, national funds to go out and do regional level targeting, right? And we went out and said, let's only go into market during COVID with dealerships that are open. So it really helped us be smart with our money.
Yeah.
And I think if you think about what's going on now with like supply chain, everything's messed up, right? From furniture to boats to, I mean, you name it. So I think there's an awesome opportunity to look at that and figure out where you have market, demand, where you might have product, where you may not have product, and leverage ATV accordingly, because you can get into like a local level buy at a national level with it, which is pretty cool.
Well, and the auto industry is dealing with the chip shortage. So you've
Yeah.
got shortages pretty much across the board. I don't know if there's some dealers who've got a car here and there that they want to, unload, and you could sort of target accordingly, or
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, with the
So,
inventory.
and I think there's a lot of industries like that right now that are suffering. So
Yeah. Well, I think we are at time, so hopefully we've got a couple of audience questions.
Hi, Tanya, it's Steve. Let's see if we have questions here in Montauk from everybody of Eric and Addressable and the way he's using Addressable.
Perfect.
Oh, over here. That's right. This is how I keep my girlish figure.
Hi, great presentation. I'm Jason Konevsky. What percent of your money has moved from linear to addressable in the last 2 or 3 years? Is there a number you can throw out?
It's sizable. I think the last slide I showed you, there were some graphs there that kind of illustrated that. Not going to share a specific percentage, but definitely in the double digits. And we as GM have corporate goals of addressability, whether that be in TV or digital channels. So I think, right, we've had a corporate shift in terms of this is important to us. We see the value and we're going to set goals against it. So, I don't think there's a right percentage for any one company. Again, it's personal, but we are heavily invested. I'd say that.
Eric, this is Steve Smith. Good to talk to you again. I have a question about creative strategy in Addressable.
Yep.
What creative are you using through Addressable? Is it substantially different from anything from what you're doing in linear and OTT? And are you using sort of the dealership connection on Addressable?
Yeah, so I think to answer the dealership part first, right now, no, right? When you go into Addressable, there are audience size limits. And when you get that granular down to, let's say, a dealership level, it's tough. If you can aggregate together, different groups of DMAs or regions or states, then yeah, you can definitely do that. And then I'm sorry, Steve, can you repeat the other question?
What is your basic creative strategy different on Addressable from the other channels? Have you actually, are you making creative specifically for this channel, and what does it look like that's different from the rest?
So we've tested into that, and I think more than the channel, we've tested into it from an audience standpoint, right? So if you think about a high propensity Cadillac audience, there's people who are in market now versus in market later. So there's kind of this marketing cube that we've developed that break out propensity for Cadillac on one side and then time to market for another. And someone who's 2 to 3 years out, right, they might need more of a brand message versus a buy now message. So we are starting to run creative tests like that. But in terms of being like ATV specific versus linear, we haven't tested into that yet. It's something we've talked about. But I'm more interested in how do we get the right message to the right audience at the right time, and we know enough about them to really move that needle first.
So then down funnel, after the addressable contact, you're able, off of that data, you're able to retarget elsewhere. What's most effective down to pushing them down funnel after that exposure? Are you hitting them mainly through email, through display retargeting, through video retargeting online? What works after the addressable?
You know, I hate to say it, but all the above, right? It kind of depends on the consumer's personal journey they select to go down. For example, right, we know a lot of people visit Cadillac.com to research a vehicle. Some people only visit our dealer websites. Some people only visit our, you know, the endemic sites like cars.com. So I think what's important is we do have the ability to follow people on their own personal journey, right? And I think that's the value of one-to-one is, as long as you have media in the places and those people show up there, you can send them a consistent message across channel. And that's the value is in that one-to-one is you can follow them. And you know, that might sound a little creepy. Obviously, this isn't like a super data compliant way, but it's about being active in the channels, waiting for the people to show up versus saying, I'm going to go out and push people to these channels.
So, and then finally, I think everybody wants to know a little bit more about how you're actually solving for that OTT clutter and CTV clutter that you talked about. For right now, does that mean you're investing more in sort of the larger reach, larger players, the ones who are already tied to your linear buys? So how, for the time being, how are you making those allocations into CTV that addresses the clutter problem? Yeah,
so we're being very selective. You know, I think the tighter you keep your circle there, the better off you are. We've identified partners that work for us. Some of those are your larger players, but you know, there's a way to kind of distribute your data where you can help control for that. And then we have gone out and talked with a lot of our partners and said, hey, will you participate in commingled analysis so we can better understand frequency? And they've stepped up, which has been awesome. So we are continually pushing all of our partners to say, hey, we want to learn more about this. We want to learn more about frequency control. So please participate in this measurement study with us. So, you know, we are pushing hard to make sure that people want to go on the journey with us and are being good partners. And we've found a really good group of a small group of partners to control that. And that'd be my advice is just, you know, test and learn and figure out what works for you. But yeah.
Eric Neville of Cadillac, thank you so much for this. This is the second time that you've spoken to us on this stuff. We really appreciate it. This is really interesting stuff. And Tanya, thank you. As always, we're going to see you in LA next month.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Awesome. Good seeing you guys. Thanks for having me.